As you of course know, Brexit did not happen immediately after the Brexit referendum in 2016. There were exhausting negotiations between the UK and the EU, first about the exit of the UK, and then about the future relationship between the EU and the UK. After the official Brexit on January 31st in 2020, where the UK officially left the EU and with it the Parliament, and I love to say at this point, thanks for that because we got rid of Nigel Farage, there was a transitional period until December 31st in 2020 to implement the new relationship. There are, yes, some longer transitional periods for some areas like passporting and stuff, but this was a very important one. People are talking a lot about the level of preparations for Brexit on the different sides, or even the lack of preparations. So in a number of my videos, I will give you an overview about the extent of preparations by different countries involved, and of course the UK and the EU as a whole. And today I will tell you about the preparations in Slovakia. After the Brexit referendum in 2016, when the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union, EU member states, including Slovakia, began making preparations to manage the potential impacts of the UK's departure. The UK, as I said, officially left the EU on January 31st in 2020, but there was a transition period until December 31st, during which the UK continued to follow EU rules while the negotiations took place to determine the future relationship between the UK and the EU. And in Slovakia, as in other EU member states, preparations for Brexit primarily focused on various aspects such as trade, citizens' rights, and regulatory adjustments. And as usual in these videos, I do have some key aspects of those preparations for you. Slovakia, like other EU member states, prepared for the possibility of a no-deal Brexit, which would have meant the UK leaving the EU without a formal arrangement in place. Slovak authorities worked to establish contingency plans for customs procedures and border checks to ensure a smooth flow of goods between the UK and Slovakia. And Slovak citizens living in the UK and UK citizens living in Slovakia needed clarification on their rights after Brexit. During the transition period, their existing rights were largely maintained, but both sides needed to communicate clearly about procedures for obtaining settled or pre-settled status. And Slovak businesses that had trade ties with the UK had to assess the potential economic impact of Brexit. This could include changes in tariffs, regulations, and supply chains. And businesses were encouraged to adapt and seek guidance on navigating those changes. Various regulatory frameworks and agreements between the UK and the EU had to be reviewed and adjusted. And this included areas such as data protection, financial services, and the transportation regulations. The Slovak government and relevant authorities worked to raise public awareness about the potential impacts of Brexit and, of course, the necessary preparations. This included providing information to citizens, businesses, and other stakeholders about the changes that could occur. And Slovakia, along with other EU member states, engaged in the negotiations with the UK to establish the future relationship, covering areas such as trade, security, and the cooperation on various fronts. Before the end of the transition period on December 31st in 2020, Brexit preparations were considered highly important for all affected countries, both within the European Union and the United Kingdom. The transition period began after the UK officially left the EU on January 31st in 2020, and it allowed time for both parties to negotiate their future relationship and to make necessary arrangements. And they were made to more or less extent in different sites. That's why I'm doing this little series. And if you want to know more, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.